Hello everyone, this is Stephen, again, located here in Portales, New Mexico. And today I'd like to talk to you about God and why I believe in God. Well, I got a short story for you, and it's absolutely 100% true, no question of doubt. And I live in the country, and I'll tell you all about this particular story. When I was a young kid, I'd gotten sick, and I was 3 years of age. And I'm almost 50 now. That was about 47 years ago, a little bit, almost 47 years ago. And I was in near a place called Atlanta, Georgia. I'm guessing I was in Atlanta. Anyway, and my father, had just given his life to God and everything, and I'd gotten really badly sick. And I had a virus called viral encephalitis. And somehow or another, I'd gotten 100 and something degree temperature, and I had to go to the hospital. And my father was fairly wealthy at the time, and what had happened, he got all this stuff. And my father tells this story about this before he died in 2001, at the day after my 36th birthday. He goes over and he tells this story about how he was praying to God, and I was sick in the hospital, and the doctors were thinking I was going to pass on and die. Well, we were anyway, my father was laying in bed. We lived in this house, and I don't remember much about it, but Dad tells me about it, that he was in this home, and he was praying to God, and he says, and this house creaked and cricked and made all kinds of noises in this bedroom while he was praying to the Lord. And it's quite obvious that someone or something did not like him praying to God. He prayed to God, says, please don't take my son away from me. Please don't take him away. Please, God, don't take my only son away from me. And he was praying and everything and crying and upset. He said, well, he got about 12 o'clock and he was crying and praying. He remembered there was a verse in the Bible that says, this is not your child, this is my child. And he says, at around 12 o'clock, he says, okay, God, if you want him, take him. And he said he went to sleep and fell asleep about 12 o'clock. So he said he woke up the next morning, about 8:30, something like that, and 9, and went up and got all dressed up and everything, and he went to the hospital where I was at, and he expected me to be dead, to be gone from his presence. And he went to talk to the doctor, expecting the worst, and he said that he says your son was on dead. Doctor said your son was on death's doorstep, and he said something miraculously happened. He said around 12 o'clock, same time that my father went to bed and said, okay, Lord, if you want him, you can have him. He says, your son started doing for the better. And this is an absolutely true story because it's happened to me. I'm the child that came across this. I'm that child. I'm 50, almost 50 years of age. And when I was growing up, I ended up with epilepsy because of it. Well, my father spent his entire life savings keeping me alive for about 10 years, and I'd had seizure after seizure after seizure after seizure. And evidently my father cared so much about me that he tried every kind of treatment there was. And he said had been praying to God, says my son is sick and he's having seizures all the time, and I don't know what to do. And finally, about 7 years after I've been having seizure after seizure after seizure with grandmal seizures and everything, he found this study, and by that time he was literally broke, didn't have hardly any money left, didn't have any funds left, didn't have hardly anything left. And he found the doctors had stated, well, we want to try your son on a mineral called chelated magnesium. And the doctor said, well, this stuff might work. It might work for your son. It says, nothing else has worked. Dilantin and phenobarbital hasn't worked. None of the analogs have worked. He's allergic to everything. So they gave me this mineral called chelated magnesium. And I want to tell you today, because of it, and I know it had to do it with God. My dad had taken like 4 years of research work in epilepsy, 4 years. And nothing, absolutely nothing worked. For 7 years, they tried me on all kinds of medication, and my father spent almost $6 or $7 million. That's like, you remember the old TV show called The $6 Million Man? Well, I was the $6 or $7 million child that they literally spent millions of dollars. And Dr. Oscar Rasmussen and Dr. Saraskin, or who's who in the world and who's who in the medical field in the United States, these guys were the ones that gave my father this idea of using a magnesium in a chelated form. And today I haven't had any grandmal seizures. The last seizure I had was in Deming, New Mexico, due to a copper smelter that was pouring selenium in the water. And I had high doses of selenium in my body. Didn't even realize it. And a lot of people in Deming don't even realize this today. They got this idea, oh, we're a small town and we know everything there is to know. So, and I ended up, and the last seizure I had, like I said, was close to 37 years ago. And because of that, I've been taking this mineral ever since. I haven't had any seizures ever since. And if I haven't had any seizures all this time, I'm not saying it's going to work for you, but it's possible, And that's primarily why I believe in God. Now, another story I want to tell you about this is when I was 21 years of age. And nobody ever knew this, and neither did my father. But my father wondered why I had a bad back. And when I was a young kid, I didn't realize evidently I'd had a bad back because I had one leg that was smaller, and it was a little bit smaller than the other. And I was walking on it, and it used to take me 3 hours, and I was living in a little town called Mechanicsburg, Illinois. And I was 21 years of age, and I couldn't find anybody. Girls wouldn't have anything to do with me, nothing of that nature. And I used to walk to church. It used to take me 3 hours to get 3 miles to Buffalo, Illinois, which is about 3 miles away, just to walk to church, back and forth. And it would take me 3 miles to get 3 hours to get back home for 3 miles. And I'm telling you, well, anyway, we were in church, and I was in church, and one day, and they had said, well, we're going to lay hands upon you. I was in a Pentecostal apostolic type of church, and we were in church, and they laid hands on me. And as I was still a child, and I was praying. I had a grandmother that didn't believe in God, had nothing, would not have anything. I prayed for her for years. I said, Lord, please get my grandmother to change her life and do something of that nature. And because I wasn't self-centered about myself, God healed me and took my leg, which is, this represent my leg, and I needed about that much to make my leg where it was straight. Well, God extended my leg, and I didn't even feel any pain. I didn't even feel it coming on or nothing. And somehow or another, I was miraculously cured. Now, does that mean that God exists? Well, how do you explain when you go to the doctor the next time? We went to see the doctor. The doctor says, well, your son doesn't have any back problems anymore. His leg is like brand new. And the doctor didn't know how to explain it. So that's the primary reason I believe in God. Because God worked miracles. And for years, I'd had seizure after seizure after seizure after seizure, and had physical and mental problems. And I had all kinds, and I still have physical and mental problems. And I'm still a poor gentleman, and I still live in a home that's paid for and everything. And I still have problems, but I haven't given up on God. God's there. You don't want to believe in God? I don't care if you believe in God or not, but I do. And don't try to destroy my belief in God because you're angry because you didn't get God like then and there. You know, it's like my last video where it says, I don't believe in God and God doesn't exist and I hate God. Well, like I said in the last video, it says, here's the site says, I hate God. And this here says, God doesn't exist. Now, explain this to me. How can you have hate for a being and there's no such thing as God? Well, it doesn't make any sense. It absolutely doesn't make any sense. How can you have hate for a being that doesn't exist? It doesn't make any sense. Yet I believe in God, and I'm not quoting scriptures, I'm just telling you these stories about my life and how that happened, and these things actually occurred. These are absolutely 100% true stories about my life. And here I am, almost 50 years of age, and I live in a mobile home, and I'm happy to live in here. And I got another story I can tell you. I'll tell you in the next video about how I got this place. You know, and I mean, it's not much of a home. It needs repair. I don't have any money to do the repair work, but God's going to provide for me. There's an old saying, and I don't know if you know this, that those who help themselves, God will help them. I don't know if that's exactly how the saying goes, but I'll tell you this much. If God helps those who help themselves, well, how are they supposed to help themselves if you don't give me a chance to do what's right? God loves you out there if you'll give him a chance. I mean, I've had miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle in my life. And maybe it didn't happen all at one time. But the problem is when people say they hate God and all this other stuff that goes on in their life, you hate God. Well, I don't understand. How can you have hate for a being that you say doesn't exist? It doesn't make any sense. Explain how you can hate a being that doesn't exist. That's like saying that God is a spaghetti monster and I hate spaghetti. That's just really stupid, okay? I do believe in God, and I want you to know that I know what it means to be a believer in the Lord. And I know that you can have faith and believe if you wanted to, but you got to give up this hate. And have hate for Christians that love God, and you want to sit there and, I hate God, and God doesn't exist, and you're all a bunch of fools. I'll explain how I got my leg where it grew without having God. Oh, it just turned out unknown. Well, how's that possible? Or how do you explain how I lived at the age of 3 after my father quit praying and said, here, Lord, you can have him, and I didn't die? Or how do you explain instances where you're looking for things and you find them and you've been praying and you pray for months and months on end? That's part of another story I want to tell you, but I'm not going to tell you right now. I'll tell you in later more stories. People only want to believe in God if he does things for them right away, and I don't understand that. If you want God to perform miracles, you better change your life, and you ought to start acting better towards everything. If you want God to do things and you don't know if God exists, pray. If you don't know whether God exists, how are you going to know if you don't pray to a being that you don't know exists? And the only way you can do anything and find out any kind of evidence of that is to look at what other things that happened to other people in their lives and see what happens. And then you make a determination whether God is there or not. These stories I've told you about my life are 100% true. And I know they exist. And I'm looking at my face occasionally and then while I'm talking about this. This is my video. I hope this helps you to understand why I believe in God. And I hope that you get your life straightened out. And maybe, hopefully, you'll believe in God too. This is my video. This is about 15 minutes long. Y'all have a good day. And I'll see you later. Bye.